Hi, I'm Rashonda Kate. This is Reading with Rashonda. We are reading The House Behind the Cedars by Charles Chesnutt. We are on chapter 24. It's not that long. I think we can make it through the whole thing in our time together, but we'll see. Chapter 24, Swing Your Partners. Moved by tenderness and thoughts of self-sacrifice, which had occupied his mind to the momentary exclusion of all else, Tryon had scarcely noticed, as he approached the house behind the cedars, a strain of lively music to which was added, as he drew still nearer, the accompaniment of other festive sounds. He suddenly awoke, however, to the fact that these signs of merriment came from the house at which he had intended to stop. He had not meant that Rena should pass another sleepless night of sorrow, or that he should himself endure another needless hour of suspense. All right. So clearly he's going to come in and see Rena dancing with what's his name? What is his name? Wayne. Okay, so he's going to see Rena dancing with Wayne, and he's going to be like, oh, my love, she's moved on. I mean, maybe that's not exactly how it's going to go down. And he, all full of his white male privilege, is just like, I can just show up. I can do the things I want to do and feel the way I want to feel and have every expectation that everybody else's world is going to align with the way that I have envisioned it for them. Ah. Okay. All right. He drew rein at the corner. Shocked surprise, a nascent anger, a vague alarm, and insistent curiosity urged him nearer. Turning the mare into the side street and keeping close to the fence, he drove ahead in the shadow of the cedars until he reached a gap through which he could see into the open door and windows of the brightly lighted hall. There was evidently a ball in progress. The fiddle was squeaking merrily to a tune that he remembered well. It was associated with one of the most delightful evenings of his life, that of the tournament ball. A mellow Negro voice was calling with a rhyming accompaniment the figures of a quadrille. Tryon, his lips with parted lips and slowly hardening heart, leaned forward from the buggy seat, gripping the reins so tightly that his nails cut into the opposing palm. Above the clatter of noisy conversation rose the fiddler's voice. Swing your partners, don't be shy, look your lady in the eye. Throw your arm around her waist, take your time, they ain't no haste. To the middle of the floor, in full view through an open window, advanced the woman who all day long had been the burden of his thoughts, not pale with grief and hollow-eyed with weeping, but flushed with pleasure, around her waist the arm of a burly, grinning mulatto whose face was offensively familiar to Tryon. Well, that's interesting. Whose face was offensively familiar to Tryon. Had he seen him before? What's their connection? And you just expect Rena to mope about because you threw her to the side? I mean, she's sad. I'm not saying that she's not, but your expectation, Tryon, is that because she is a woman and a legally Black woman at that, that you were just the height of everything to her, and she's going to spend the rest of her life groaning that she isn't attached to you and basking in your shadow. The hubris of that. And then to be like, she's having fun. People dance with lots of people. Even back then, like you could switch partners and dance with different people. She's having fun. Maybe, I don't know, she didn't really want to dance, but she may have been like, you know what, I'm going to enjoy myself. And around her waist, the arm of a burly, grinning mulatto whose face was offensively familiar to Tryon. Burly, grinning mulatto like that. Okay, so Tryon is only going to see somebody who is his enemy, but still, I'm very curious about whose face was offensively familiar. Not just familiar, but offensively familiar. All right, with a muttered curse of concentrated bitterness, Tryon struck the mare a sharp blow with the whip. The sensitive creature, spirited even in her great weariness, resented the lash and started off with the bit in her teeth. Perceiving that it would be difficult to turn in the narrow roadway without running into the ditch at the left, Tryon gave the mare rein and dashed down the street, scarcely missing, as the buggy crossed the bridge, a man standing abstractedly by the old canal, who sprang aside barely in time to avoid being run over. Meantime, Rena was passing through a trying ordeal. After the first few bars, the fiddler plunged into a well-known air in which Rena, keenly susceptible to musical impressions, recognized the tune to which, as Queen of Love and Beauty, she had opened the dance at her entrance into the world of life and love, for it was there she had met George Tryon. The combination of music and movement brought up the scene with great distinctness. Tryon, peering angrily through the cedars, had not been more conscious than she of the external contrast between her partners on this and the former occasion. She perceived, too, as Tryon from the outside had not, the difference between Wayne's wordy flattery, only saved by his cousin's warning from pointed and fulsome adulation, and the tenderly graceful compliment couched in the romantic terms of chivalry with which the knight of the handkerchief had charmed her ear. It was only by an immense effort that she was able to keep her emotions under control until the end of the dance, when she fled to her chamber and burst into tears. It was not the cruel Tryon who had blasted her love with his deadly look that she mourned, but the gallant young knight who had won her favor on his lance and crowned her queen of love and beauty. Yeah, so I was thinking she might not be having fun, but I was hopeful. Like, go ahead and have fun. So Rena was probably playing the role of having fun to mask what she was actually feeling. And gracious, we know she's good at playing roles. Tryon's stay in Patesville was very brief. He drove to the hotel and put up for the night. During many sleepless hours, his mind was in turmoil with a very different set of thoughts from those which had occupied it on the way to town. Of course, he is so sometimey. Oh my gosh. Like, stick with your mission, man. If that's what you want to do, you want to go reclaim her, go reclaim her. I mean, I would have had something to say about that too. I'm not going to lie. But like, you see her dancing with somebody once and you're like, and he's going to turn back to hate. Like he does. He clearly, what are his feelings? I get he's conflicted, but I don't know what the depth of his feelings actually ever were. If he can go from love to hate and love to hate. Okay. I'm sorry. During many sleepless hours, his mind was in a turmoil with a very different set of thoughts from those which had occupied it on the way to town. Not the least of them was a profound self-contempt for his own lack of discernment. How had he been so blind as not to have read long ago the character of this wretched girl who had bewitched him? See, now she's a wretched girl. I'm in love. She's a wretched girl. Oh, gracious. Tonight his eyes had been opened. He had seen her with the mask thrown off, a true daughter of a race in which the sensuous enjoyment of the moment took precedence of taste or sentiment or any of the higher emotions. Oh my gosh. I am like on the verge of furious with him right now. He had seen her with the mask thrown off. He had seen her with her mask on. Ah, a true daughter of a race in which the sensuous enjoyment of the moment took precedence of taste or sentiment or any of the higher emotions. So I'm mad for a couple of reasons here. One, he's mischaracterizing Rena, but two, I'm of this race that he's talking about that has sensuous enjoyment of the moment that takes precedence of taste or of sentiment or any of the higher emotions. Like, are you saying that all Black people just, ooh, there's music, let's do whatever we feel like doing, we can't control ourselves, there's nothing else that's happening, come on now? Her few months of boarding school, her brief association with white people had evidently been a mere veneer over the underlying Negro, and their effects had slipped away as soon as the intercourse had ceased. With the monkey-like imitativeness of the Negro, she had copied the manners of white people while she lived among them and had dropped them with equal facility when they ceased to serve a purpose. Who but a Negro could have recovered so soon from what had seemed a terrible bereavement? She herself must have felt it at the time, for otherwise she would not have swooned. A woman of sensibility, as this one had seemed to be, should naturally feel more keenly and for a longer time than a man in injury to the affections. Why? Okay, one, she felt all of it, but why? Why should a woman, a woman of sensibility, as this one had seemed to be, should naturally feel more keenly and for a longer time than a man? Why? What? What? Now are we saying men can't have the full range of emotions? Oh, I am having all the moments right here. Oh my gosh. Okay. But he, a son of the ruling race, had been miserable for 6 weeks about a girl who had so far forgotten him as already to plunge headlong into the childish amusements of her own ignorant and degraded people. What more, indeed, he asked himself savagely, what more could be expected of the base-born child of the plaything of a gentleman's idle hour, who to this ignoble origin added the blood of a servile race? And he, George Tryon, had honored her with his love. He had very nearly linked his fate and joined his blood to hers by the solemn sanctions of church and state. Tryon was not a devout man, but he thanked God with religious fervor that he had been saved a second time from a mistake which would have wrecked his whole future. Oh, gracious! If he had yielded to the momentary weakness of the past night, the outcome of a sickly sentimentality to which he recognized now in the light of reflection that he was entirely too prone, he would have regretted it soon enough. The black streak would have been sure to come out in some form sooner or later, if not in the wife, then in her children. Her children, not their children. Oh, he saw clearly enough in this hour of revulsion that with his temperament and training, such a union could never have been happy. If all the world had been ignorant of the dark secret, it would always have been in his own thoughts, or at least never far away. Each fault of hers that the close daily association of husband and wife might reveal. The most flawless of sweethearts do not pass scatheless through the long test of matrimony. Every wayward impulse of his children, every defect of mind, morals, temper, or health would have been ascribed to the dark ancestral strain. Happiness under such conditions would have been impossible. I get with that. If you think this poorly of Black people and you know she's Black, then anything bad that ever happened with her or the children you would ascribe to being Black. You absolutely would. And it would have been an unhappy marriage. Yes, I totally agree with that. When Tryon lay awake in the early morning after a few brief hours of sleep, the business which had brought him to Patesville seemed, in the cold light of reason, so ridiculously inadequate that he felt almost ashamed to have set up such a pretext for his journey. The prospect, too, of meeting Dr. Green and his family, of having to explain his former sudden departure, and of running a gauntlet of inquiry concerning his marriage to the aristocratic Miss Warwick of South Carolina, the fear that someone at Patesville might have suspected a connection between Rena's swoon and his own flight, these considerations so moved this impressionable and impulsive young man that he called a bellboy, demanded an early breakfast. Of course he did. Of course he's acting out in all the ways that fit him, regardless of how inconvenient it can be for anybody else. Of course, that's who you are, George Tryon. And I know I'm painting you with a broad strokes of all the, bad character traits that this type of person has, but I think I'm supposed to be. I think that's what Chesnutt is asking me to do here. All right. He demanded an early breakfast, ordered his horse, paid his reckoning, and started upon his homeward journey forthwith. A certain distrust of his own sensibility, which he felt to be curiously inconsistent with his most positive convictions, led him to seek the river bridge by a roundabout route which did not take him past the house where, a few hours before, he had seen the last fragment of his idol shattered beyond the hope of repair. And I think that's one of the problems. She was an idol to him. She wasn't really a person. She was a personification of a bunch of things. And that's never going to go well because no person is that. And if that's who you were seeking in your marriage, you will be imminently disappointed. The party broke up at an early hour since most of the guests were working people, and the travelers were to make an early start next day. About 9 in the morning, Wayne drove round to Miss Molly's. Rena's trunk was strapped behind the buggy, and she set out in the company of Wayne for her new field of labor. The school term was only 2 months in length, and she did not expect to return until its expiration. Just before taking her seat in the buggy, Rena felt a sudden sinking of the heart. "Oh, Mother," she whispered, as they stood wrapped in a close embrace, "I'm afraid to leave you. I left you once, and it turned out so miserably." It'll turn out better this time, honey, replied her mother soothingly. Goodbye, child. Take care of yourself and your money, and write to your mammy. One kiss all around, and Rena was lifted into the buggy. Wayne seized the reins, and under his skillful touch, the pretty mare began to prance and curvet with restrained impatience. Wayne could not resist the opportunity to show off before the party, which included Mary B's entire family and several other neighbors who had gathered to see the travelers off. Goodbye to Patesville. Goodbye, folks, is all, he cried with a wave of his disengaged hand. Goodbye, mother. Goodbye, all, cried Rena, as with tears in her heart and a brave smile on her face, she left her home behind for the second time. When they had crossed the river bridge, the travelers came to a long stretch of rising ground, from the summit of which they could look back over the white sandy road for nearly a mile. Neither Rena nor her companion saw Frank Fowler behind the chinkapin bush at the foot of the hill, nor the gaze of mute love and longing with which he watched the buggy mount the long incline. He had not been able to trust himself to bid her farewell. He had seen her go away once before with every prospect of happiness and come back, a dove with a wounded wing, to the old nest behind the cedars. She was going away again with a man whom he disliked and distrusted. If she had met misfortune before, what were her prospects for happiness now? The buggy paused at the top of the hill, and Frank, shading his eyes with his hand, thought he could see her turn and look behind. Look back, dear child, towards your home and those who love you. For who knows more than this faithful worshiper what threads of the past fate is weaving into your future, or whether happiness or misery lies before you? Wow, and that was chapter 24 of House Behind the Cedars by Charles Chesnutt. This is Reading with Rashonda, and I'm Rashonda Cade.